Hello boys and girls, it's 4 o'clock in the morning here and I just finished working with two clients just now, but I really wanted to do this video before I went to sleep, and it's about the Hindu Perspective on Narcissism, which is a pretty funky title for a video. So I was chatting to my friend before, a young friend of mine who I know from the gym, and we were just bantering. I was giving him shit, as I always do, as I give all of my friends shit who smoke weed. I said, you shouldn't smoke weed, it's fucking weakness, it will steal your motivation, and it will, you know, your memory will, you'll be a degenerate, turn into a monkey. And he said to me, oh no, I'm not smoking weed just to get high. He said, I'm smoking weed to explore my religion. And I was like, okay, this is going to be good. Tell me how it helps you to explore your religion. So we started to talk about Hinduism, and this lad had been depressed, and he'd been on antidepressants a year ago, and he said weed, and what he does is he gets high, and then he prays when he's high. And he said that works better for me than any antidepressant ever did. And I said, well, what was your experience of antidepressants? And he said, oh, it made me not feel sad, but it also made me not feel happy either. And I didn't like that, I just felt numb. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I've heard a few people say, I've never taken antidepressants, I never would. But a few people have said that to me, they just feel numb. And I said, okay, so you're exploring Hinduism. You know, like this kid is he's a middle class, from a wealthy family, and he's a banker. I was like, really? Okay, let's have this conversation then. What's the deal? And he said, okay, well, what the deal is that I think that the world is becoming too materialistic, and that we need to learn to recapture a more spiritual path. And I said, okay, well, what do you mean by materialism? And what he said was that in the Hindu perspective, materialism isn't just like cars, houses, clothes, things that you can have or things that you can consume, drugs, food, or things like that. It's actually also your body as well. So if you're living in a materialist culture and you're materially attached and you're living a materialist lifestyle, it's also your body. And I said, so that when we go to the gym and I'm doing weights and you're doing weights and you're asking me for advice and stuff like that, that's materialism then? And he said, yes. He said, it's materialism. We're investing in things that will die and disappear. And in Hinduism, we see the body as clothes, in a sense that you will eventually change, and you've got to change your clothes and you'll reincarnate and you'll come back. And I said, okay, that's interesting. And I said, well, that's materialism. And he said, yeah, but it's more than that. He said, it's also being heavily invested in pleasure in the moment, you know, what you can consume, how much sex you can have, the nice car you can drive, and things of this world. That's materialism. And I said, okay. So if somebody does a lot of weights and they get a big body and stuff, that's materialism. And if they want to have a lot of sex, then that's materialism. And they want to be self-indulgent, that's materialism. He said, yes. And obviously he's a pothead, so he's also a big fan of The Lord of the Rings. And he was saying it's like Smaug, the dragon in the Desolation of Smaug. He's obsessed with his wealth. I mean, that dragon isn't doing anything with the gold coins and the jewels and the treasures that he lives amongst, because presumably he doesn't need to eat, he doesn't go out fucking lady dragons, he doesn't drive a big dragon car, and he already lives in like a massive house. He doesn't want any of these things, he just wants to own things for the purpose of owning them. So in a sense the Tolkien myth has some really cool criticisms of modern life in it. And I was talking to my friend about this, and I was saying, yeah, it actually seems to be a criticism of greed for greed's own sake, the love of gold for nothing, because you can't spend it, you can't do anything with it. He's not, and Smaug, I didn't read the book, I just saw the film. All he's doing is sleeping in the gold. He just curls up inside a bit, piles the gold and the jewels on top of himself and goes, and then sleeps. And that's all he does. So we were talking about that as well. And I said, what's another example of pure materialism from modern culture that I could understand? And he said The Great Gatsby. And I was like, great, because I couldn't sit through that film and I didn't read the book. The film was annoying and the book I didn't get. He said, no, it's a similar thing. A guy who's very, very wealthy, who just throws parties and lives a wealthy, hedonistic lifestyle. Okay, fine. What would be spiritual? So he said this. He said, in Hinduism, we believe that the soul has a piece of God inside of it. And I said, okay, I'm a little bit ignorant with the Hinduism. Do you mean, like, which God are you talking about? And he said, no, there's an overall God, which is Vishnu. And he said, so that when I meditate, when I chant, I'm actually reconnecting with that part of me that is godlike, and that gives me sort of a relief from anxiety and from depression. And he said that worked way better than antidepressants did. And I said, okay, but it still involves drugs because you're still getting high. And he was still trying to defend this point, so I was questioning him more. And we both, me and this lad, we know a couple of people who are narcissists, and he's been to some of my psychology groups. And I said, in terms of like the Hindu perception of materialism, how does that relate to what I've told you about narcissism? And he said, well, what I understood your description of narcissism to be, but it's not my description of narcissism. He heard it from me, so he thinks it's mine, but obviously I've got it from books and from the internet and other stuff. He said that's just pure materialism. Because if you're committed to the material world and you believe that you have just one life, and what you are is this flesh machine that can only experience so much pleasure, then obviously you would as rapidly and as quickly and as hysterically and as desperately and as competitively as you could consume as much pleasure as you could. You would build up as much of a story about yourself as you could. You know, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, selfieing myself, selfieing the food I eat before I eat it, and then sending that picture out to fucking other people to look at for no reason whatsoever. And I brought it back to the gym and I was like, well, what about the guys who take steroids and get tattoos? He said, yeah, that's more materialism. You're investing in stuff that is temporal, that will disappear, and the point of it is that your belief system is there is only one life, and the life is about what you as an individual point of observation get to experience. And he said in Hinduism we call all of that materialism Maya, that's illusion. And he said the more deeply invested in illusion you are, the more miserable you will be. The more you disconnect and the more you're connected to God, the happier you will be. And I said, okay, so when you look at like mystics in India, living saints, people who come away from the world and do certain things, certain practices, you'll see guys who've like held their hands over their head for like 10 years to the point where their arm is now deformed and they can't put their hand back down again as a gesture of discipline and self-discipline to connect themselves with the divine, that kind of thing. I said, so are those people trying to disconnect from the material realm? And he said, they're not really trying to disconnect from the material realm. What they're trying to do is get as close to God as possible in the way that we understand it. And I said, oh, okay. So the narcissistic lifestyle matches the description of an adherence to materialism as the Hindu perspective has it perfectly. Everything is about you. Everything is about what you can do, your story, who you are, your tattoos, your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram, it's your desperate signature on life that you're desperately trying to scribble out before life is snuffed, because it's short and it's quick and then it's gone. And I said, the way that you describe it, that sounds really fucking miserable. And he said, yeah. And he said, in Hinduism we believe that this is the age of misery. He said there's 4 ages, and we believe, we call this age Kali Yuga. And he said this is the worst age. And I said, what do Hindus believe happens in this age? And he said this, and this freaked me out. He said, we believe that people will devolve and not evolve in this age, that human evolution stops and that people will get dumber, that people will get more selfish, that their baser instincts will come out, and that they will go deeper into Maya, deeper into illusion, deeper into materialism, and they will go as far away from spirituality as they possibly can get. And I said, do you believe that's happening now? And he said, yeah, absolutely, look around. We were in a restaurant, we're in a rich area of Kuala Lumpur, surrounded by clothes shops and people trying to dress as nicely as they can and eat as much nice food as they can and be the biggest version of themselves that they can possibly be. And all of that is materialism, and all of that matches the description of narcissists. Can a narcissist truly have any deeply held spiritual beliefs? That's a tricky one. if you had any kind of, like, not necessarily Hinduism, but Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Saya Loka Saya, whatever it happens to be, would you truly not have any empathy? Would you truly be invested in this world to such a degree that you felt like your competitive need to put other people down and to climb up the monkey pyramid would be worth hurting other people? Could you have any belief in karma or an afterlife in which you would be judged? The Hindus, I only found this out, and I have both. They actually believe in a judgment. I can't speak for all. I think his particular brand of Hinduism is related to the Hare Krishnas, and he said, and for us, we have judgment after death, and we have reincarnation that's based on that judgment. I said, okay, so if you truly believed that, could you use and exploit people? And if you truly believe, not if you say you believe it and then you live as though that is true but it's not true, but if you truly believe it, would you exploit other people? No, you wouldn't. Well, the essence of narcissistic abuse, as far as I can see, is about the exploitation of other people. I have to believe that my pleasure is more important than your pain, and if you experience pain, it doesn't matter as long as I'm getting my pleasure. That to me has been my experience of what narcissistic abuse is, and it doesn't have to be something as blatant and explicit as robbery or murder or rape. You know, I'm going to do something that I know tortures you, but I want to feel good, and fuck you if it hurts you. It can be as simple as these little dopamine hits that people get by putting other people down, by, you know, using passive aggressive strategies, by attacking people at a personal level, by using ad hominem as a means of getting that dirty little buzz, that little oh yes, oh I told you, and then running off twiddling their own nipples. Yes. So that was enlightening for me, because I thought, well, there's a description of narcissism, but it coming from the Hindu perspective, and it's their description of what materialism is. So therefore it's not a mental illness. In the Kali Yuga age, it's not mental illness. It's the natural result of living in an age of devolution where people, I don't believe that, by the way, I think we're in a very strange age, and I do think devolution is occurring. But I don't believe in something called Kali Yuga per se, and as such you're on it. The map is not the territory, but it was interesting to take a walk inside of that map and look around and go, hey, a lot of this stuff actually really, really makes sense. Our attachment to the material world, our attachment to materialism is pain. From my point of view, most of my philosophical or semi-religious sort of understandings have come from studying more like Western mysticism, the Kabbalah and the Tarot. And I remember saying to YouTube user, my cyber friend, most of my best friends at the moment are on the internet, because it's more, we can actually connect on the basis of core values rather than on the basis of, oh, you just know each other from school or you met each other from your hometown. You can actually do the Terence McKenna thing of sending up a flare and connecting with people on the basis of core values. And Strangest Dude, HSP, I was talking to him about the tarot and the material world a couple of months ago, and in the tarot the devil card is represented in the Rider-Waite tarot, is represented as the devil sat on a throne, and chained to the throne is a naked man and a naked woman. They're chained around the neck, and it's his chaining of the human mind to the material world, to the world of pleasure, sex, drugs, rock and roll, baby. That which can be immediately experienced and consumed now, because there is no tomorrow. And that's a very old Western myth. If you read Faust, you know, which is based on an older myth, I'm not sure where it comes from. The one that I was made to read at school was Faust, and this idea of, I read it and I was like, this is the music industry. This is everything I've ever seen about the celebrity machine. I was 18 when I read it, and I was like, this is the music industry. This is the celebrity machine. This is the story of Faust. Take your pleasure now. Sign a deal with the devil. And I'm not like one of these Christian fundamentalists who say that, oh, Rihanna's literally signed a deal with Satan, or Katy Perry's literally got a pen out and gone, hey, Satan. And no, these are metaphors. These are linguistic metaphors. But it's take your pleasure now experience your pain later. You know, a literal like pain of hell, the agonies of hell in Faust, as written by Marlowe. It's quite graphic. It's clearly depicted that Faust will experience dreadful torture and dreadful pain, but he did it. He sold his soul so that he could experience the good times now, and that's the Western, I guess, perspective of a Hindu idea of being attached to the material realm, of that it's worth it. It's worth selling your soul and going to hell because it's worth all this pleasure, because all this pleasure is so fucking great. Which of course it can't be. It can never live up to that. So I found that interesting, and I thought it was important enough to share. And now I've offloaded it. I can sleep peacefully, and I hope I dream of angels and heavenly things, and not demons and vileness. Oh, the final thing about the tarot. When the devil card is pulled in the tarot, most interpretations are not evil, doom, death, pain, you know, you will have an accident. The standard interpretation, I'm not saying this is real or true or scientific, I'm saying this just so you know, is the opportunity to be self-indulgent, and sometimes it is presented, depending on the spread, as being potentially positive, but it is always something that is naughty, in a slightly sexy way, something that is taboo, something that you shouldn't do. But the risk that is there, the chain represents addiction. So it's not like, oh, we're going to experience this material pleasure, eat the chocolate cake, have the sex, smoke the cigarette, snort the line of coke, and then go back to ourselves and feel all fine and normal, because you can't do that. That's not how it works. It's about the addictive cycle and going, oh, that felt really good, and my normal life doesn't feel like it, so I'm going to go back to that again. And so then you can look at it from a point of view and say, well, actually narcissists are actually pure materialists. If you take materialism beyond money and beyond cars and physical things, it's pure materialism in the sense of this material, my flesh is material, who I am is material. There's no soul here, there's no spirit here, there's no infinity, there's no eternity, there's no spirit, there's no all consciousness, all of that squishy fuzzy shit. It's all nonsense. All I am is a machine, and I have 70 years to fuck as much as I can, to drink as much as I can, to eat as much as I can, and to snort as much Peruvian as I can. That's materialism from a more Hindu perspective, as my friend described it to me. And he's not a Hindu scholar as such, he's just a kid who has really come a long way just by re-exploring his own core religion. He's not drifted off into any other religion. He's gone back, he's gone away from, he had psychological problems, he had depression, and he went to a therapist. They gave him antidepressants, and he decided that he would rather smoke weed and chant mantras, which I'm sure would put anybody into a trance. I like the Hindu mantras. I've used the Gayatri mantra a bunch of times. It's nice. What was my final point? It's gone. Never mind. We'll catch it next time. Maybe we could all learn something from detaching from the material realm and question our beliefs about what we believe we are and how that affects how we treat other people and how we treat ourselves. And move. If you can't move, you can't be like, oh, there's a piece of God in my soul and I need to move closer to that piece of God that's in my soul. If that doesn't work for you, find another way of saying it. You know, I'm going to do a video at some point about astrology, or rather astronomy, and how a purely scientific look at the stars will lead you to some fairly mystical, quote-unquote, spiritual beliefs, and you don't have to move outside of science. You just need to look at stars and what stars are and how they move and how far apart they are, and you will start feeling pretty mystical pretty quickly. I think there's a reason why stars have always been important in terms of mystical systems in the West. If you think about it, why are wizards portrayed as having cloaks that are covered in stars and hats that are covered in stars? But anyway, I'm not going to get into that today. I'll get into it another time. Final point just about therapy. As I was talking to him, I said, when you raised with your therapist this idea that you believe that we're in an age that's called Kali Yuga, that's more materialistic and more selfish, and we're actually in a phase of devolution, what did your therapist say? And he said, well, first of all, I didn't frame it like that, but he said, I feel depressed because there's so much cruelty and unpleasantness in the world. And his therapist said to him, you are just projecting. So remember, kids, if you have a reasonable, objective, rational judgment about the world, if it's not anything other than this world is fucking perfect. Society and culture are A-OK, and the way we live now in the modern Western world under this brand of consumer capitalism is perfect. And if you question it, you're projecting, and you're probably a bit crazy, and you should take these drugs that we don't really know what they do. This isn't drugs, this is a plastic thing. Don't take drugs, kids. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you very much for your time and your attention, as ever, and I will speak to you again soon.